This is not the type of video I typically make. I know that's the standard line for any YouTuber who makes a more serious or negative video, but I'm genuinely worried for the health and survival of this game. I've had my eyes on DBD since 2016 from a Vanoss gaming video, but because I was 12, I of course did not have access to this game, for better or for worse. I then danced around this game for the coming years, watching video after video, having it recommended to me by friends, yet I never got into it because a close friend of mine said the game was horrible. So instead I played Overwatch on occasion and Warframe like it was my 9-to-5 job, until eventually something caught my eye. Chapter 28, End Transmission. A sci-fi chapter that, from what I could tell, looked like it was made for me. But I remained hesitant due to previous warnings. However, with Overwatch 2 being a hot pile of garbage that my friends and I wanted to quit, and 7 years worth of burnout from Warframe, my friends who were DBD veterans wanted to return to it, hearing it was in a good state. So, not wanting to be left behind, I bought the game while it was on sale. What I was met with was a game that had me utterly enthralled with every singular facet of it. The lore, the artistry, the music, the unique gameplay, the freedom of choice, and most importantly, the seemingly endless skill ceiling. And just like that, I was hooked. I played Survivor and Customs with my friends regularly. I picked up Ghostface as my first ever killer due to my love of stealth in other games. But then it happened. Singularity's released to live. As predicted, the chapter was perfect for me. I fell even harder for DBD because of this chapter. In games, I typically go for the hardest characters that make me use my brain the most, especially if their effort gets little to no value, the juice not being worth the squeeze and all. Singularity fit everything I wanted in a character, not only in that gameplay, but in the design, the voice lines, his personality, the lore. I fuck with Gabriel too, but his fits are so ass. It genuinely felt like he was a welcoming gift for me joining this game, like it was fate for me to finally play DBD after watching it from afar for so long. There is not a single character in any game that has fit me as well as old Singularity. You may notice that I said old Singularity there, but we'll get to that. The game felt really balanced back then. Sure, a few bad maps here and there for either side, a broken killer or two, dumbass perks that took 7 months to nerf, but I never could really say it was killer-sided or survivor-sided back then without it just being about a map or an insane killer setup with someone like Nurse. It felt great on both sides overall. A friend of mine used to praise me for making fun builds that fit really well with the killer I put it on. Perks that complemented their power and maybe some add-ons to take the build even further. It felt like I could use almost anything and win. In this endless sea of perks, add-ons, and killers, almost everything felt viable. The sky was the limit. However, all good things must come to an end. In an attempt to make their game healthier by attacking mean strategies, they ended up not only taking away from some of the strategic depth of this game, but also taking away pressure options for the killer without any real compensation. In typical behavior fashion, nerfing the wrong parts of something or nerfing the right thing in the completely wrong way, but more on that later. In 7.1, the Nicolas Cage update, they removed hook grabs, and in turn, removed a fun back and forth interaction from both the killer and survivors, making it so almost every unhook without a coordinated team effort would just be a trade instead. In 7.3, Alien's mid-chapter update, they added the anti-face camp feature to stop face camping altogether, and make those pesky basement bubbas actually play the character. A good change on paper, but did it really do all that much considering proxy camping was always the stronger option anyway? A really good fix for camping Bubbas clearly, as now instead of just staring at you for 2 minutes until you die, he instead just fucking kills you the moment you jump off hook. Brilliant! As someone who is not a Bubba player, I cannot recommend a proper fix of that without nuking his base kit. But knowing you behavior, you probably already took Bubba out back upon hearing me even say that. In 7.5, the Alan Wake update, they had the anti-3-gen system, but instead of making it only affect the area control killers that were good at this style of play, or at the bare minimum making it so the system would only take place at lower gen counts to prevent planned 3-gens and fixing some maps to compensate while still making sure survivors get punished for 3-gen themselves, instead we punish every killer for the entire game for potentially playing too well with slowdown perks or normal gen kicks. But hey, At least no more gen tap contests, and killers now have a slightly stronger gen kick. In 7.6, the All Things Wicked chapter, they randomly decided to gut the Mangled status effect, making more of the interesting killer perks and add-ons have an even larger gap in power compared to gen slowdown perks and hurting some of the weaker killers. They tried to bullshit their way out of this one by saying it created a new layer of strategy, but in reality, any survivor who's comfortable with being injured is just going to sit on gens even more until the timer runs out anyway. This gets even worse with the more updates I list going forward. In 8.0, the Dungeons & Dragons chapter, they nerfed 4 strong gen slowdown perks. While I don't technically have a problem with this, the game is very clearly still built around slowdown. I'm fine with nerfing direct regression perks, but why is Deadlock here? Why is Grim Embrace's duration getting nerfed when the issue with Grim Embrace was that it stacked a Dead Man's Switch? Which still works, by the way. Nerfing gen block based slowdown perks just seems a bit silly in comparison to the perks that actively make survivors have to sit on gens longer rather than the healthier alternative of letting them do other actions and not have to worry about their gen regressing so they don't have to grip M1 longer. In 8.1, the Tomb Raider update, they giga buffed a bunch of healing perks, the main one that really matters being Resurgence, as anyone would expect, followed up with 8.7, Steady Pulse. With the addition of my fellow trans girl, we got another strong healing perk. We nuke every anti-heal option, but make healing even stronger. Backtrack a little bit to 8.2, the Castlevania chapter, they also made hook times 70 seconds instead of 60 per hook, making camping even weaker, including proxy camping. In turn, making survivors more incentivized to just sit on gens and wait for the time to where they absolutely have to get their teammate. Now fast forward to update 9.0, the FNAF chapter. They changed the spawn logic, which was not exactly a problem, except for the fact that now it lacks the consistency it used to have. I could bring up gens flying more due to survivors doubling up more because of the spawn changes, but from a balance standpoint, it is less efficient to do that. However, it doesn't change that it psychologically feels like shit to see 2 gens pop in 30 seconds, which is the time you're meant to somehow find someone, and finish a chase without even accounting for maps, bad spawns, your killer of choice, and distance from your hook or objective. Editing star here, I'm going to interrupt like 1 or 2 more times later in this video, but I forgot to mention that in the FNAF chapter, they also removed the one downside that botany knowledge had, so you can add that to the healing pile too. Update 9.1, The Walking Dead, was not too offensive towards Killer besides the absurd amount of bugs and an annoying item that has since been annihilated. However, they did buff bully squads and make them even more unfun for most players. Really welcoming your new players from the FNAF chapter with this one, huh? Finally to modern day. Have you been noticing a pattern here? Only like 2 of these updates actually give the killer anything back in return for the changes, at least for the role as a whole, forcing killer even further into use the meta or explode rather than being able to run the fun stuff if you want to have anything over a 5-minute game, whether from picking an S tier killer and winning immediately, or playing a B tier or lower without slowdown and watching helplessly as gens pop like New Year's fireworks. Behavior's answer to this? Just buff or rework individual killers and maybe a non-gen related perk or 2 with them. Well, not a bad thing on its own, their approach not only doesn't make the killer role feel any better unless you're playing a high tier, but their philosophy when making these changes always seems to make them miss the mark at least in some way. Here's a list of examples. Buffing the wrong aspect instead of the actual problem, although typically nice quality of life changes so nobody cares. Buffing something too little despite knowing they'll get positive community response from said killer receiving buffs, and even sometimes those said buffs come with a complete nuking of their add-ons for seemingly no reason. Reworking a killer completely to the point of being unrecognizable and or unplayable and refusing to listen to ample feedback. And we need to leave. Just hold W. He can't do anything about it. This fucking rework is such an unbelievable failure. I cannot even put it into words.
Oh, this gen's already done.
It's fine, I'm just gonna hold W with life. Sorry, bitch. Or in my opinion, the worst offender, just making the killer easier and alienating their original player base. But there's one final answer behavior has, and that's just to bloat every killer's kit or make them as strong as humanly fucking possible. Which leads me to Sinister Grace, the current chapter. as you probably saw in the thumbnail. While no big killer changes hit live, one of the most insane killers ever released did, the Gradual. As of the time writing the script, she still has yet to be nerfed. Editing star here again, she has since been nerfed. It's not enough, but thankfully Behavior knows that as well as we do, so she's getting a second batch of changes next week, which is very nice. I just hope that they manage to find the fine line between it, because I don't want her to get over-nerfed and then nobody gets to enjoy her. And I also don't want her to stay some OP monster and then Survivor's just miserable anytime that she's on screen. So hopefully they can figure that out. So I'm just gonna reserve my judgment and let you get back to pre-recorded star. But I'm not here to rant about the Gradual and how she's the most OP thing released since Blight, Nurse, or Ghoul. I'm here to talk about more of what she represents. A little disclaimer is that I will give Behavior some understanding here, as I know that listening to feedback on your new killer is hard when everyone is focused on the anti-tunnel and anti-slugging changes, so I'm not going to be too hard on them overall. Although, for the future, don't release a new killer with such big changes. With that being said, this is such a weird character to follow up Springtrap with. While Springtrap is easy to pick up, he has an insanely high skill ceiling for older players to pick apart with time. Gradual not only doesn't have a fucking skill ceiling, but she also shows how little Behavior have learned from the past killers. I can understand her getting to be a little bit overtuned, but how is it we brought back Chucky but in a new flesh? He has Scamper 2 Electric Boogaloo, a dash that goes around almost every obstacle in the game that also seems like it hits over pallets and windows. Are we fucking serious? And has an easy infection as the only requirement to be able to access this insane power. Said infection also has auto-aim, by the way. You don't know the heartbreak I had to hear in my friend's voice when he found it out, thinking he had hit these insane shots, only to realize the game spoon-fed him those. This killer is way too easy for the value she gets. All she really needed was for her dash to not feel like shit, and for mushrooms to not be as abundant at the start of the game. Instead, we just remove all of her counterplay and make her a stronger nemesis. Gradual frightens me, because while I know she's 1000% getting nerfed, they'll probably make a mistake while nerfing her like they do when they change any killer, nerfing some wrong aspects of her and making her unfun for those who like her, while I also imagine they won't remove the auto-aim or make her harder, just not as strong. I should also clarify that making an easy killer is fine, as long as that easy gameplay also translates for the Survivor counterplay. The scales should typically be even on both sides, depending on the killer difficulty. Regardless, her being easy, specifically having auto-aim, worries me, because not only have I seen it before, but if I were to say how unfair that Gradual having auto-aim is to Unknown, who has to work so hard for nothing, Behavior will just hear that, and instead of taking away Gradual's auto-aim and or buffing Unknown, they'd probably just fucking give him auto-aim too! Taking away his skill ceiling that makes me and so many other people enjoy him. Speaking of Unknown, why did we buff him so little? Is he not one of the community's favorite killers? Why did we nerf some of his add-ons, including fucking shadow nerfing his only Eerie with a drawback? Are we kidding? Anyway, there's a lot more that could be said about individual killers, but that's not the point of this video. The point is, I'm worried Behavior will keep repeating the same mistakes for all of eternity. I'm worried we'll be in some shitty us versus them argument no matter the context or truth. I'm worried we're gonna be in this battle for proper balance forever until the game fucking explodes one day. And I'm especially worried that if even the game lives, that the skill ceiling that made me fall in love with this game is just gonna become non-existent. I'm worried about this not just because of the new killer design, but because of what they did to my favorite killer. I know I said I'm not gonna talk more about individual killers, but just hear me out on this one. The Singularity, as I said earlier, this killer meant everything to me. He had to put his entire brain into everything. Well, I'm happy he got buffed all that time ago, because I hated that he was add-on reliant for the sake of participating in tournaments and creativity being limited back then. But other than that, he was perfect, at least to me. But instead of just buffing him in the ways that mattered and calling it a day, they decided to destroy most of the brain-intensive requirement for the sake of making him easier for other players, completely alienating people like myself who wanted him to always be demanding, even if he was now strong. Removing his stack to the overclock duration for every survivor that was slipstreamed, and making his overclock max duration be the default, which leads him to not having to time his teleports nearly as precisely or play for the macro, adding aim assist to his gun, adding auto aim to his cameras, although optional, giving him an add-on that is just an aspect of Skull Merchant slapped onto his kit that makes him really good at tunneling. This isn't the same killer I fell in love with, although I wouldn't go as far to call him brain dead. I just find myself playing Unknown and Springtrap instead because they're the closest thing I have to old Singularity. Man, I miss him so much. Anyway, back on topic. So how do we fix the killer role while keeping it fun and fair for the survivors? How do we go back on certain changes to killers to bring back what made them fun in the first place, while still nerfing or buffing the needed aspects? I'm only a 900-hour player, at least according to Behavior Stat Site. I don't have a perfect answer for you in terms of balance, and although I really like Otofu's take, I'm not sure it would be enough. I may not know what's best for the game's balance, but I do know what feels good and feels like shit to play as or against. I do know from Behavior statements what's hurting their process of fixing the game. We need to figure out the path forward, whether through some base kit reward for killer for playing nice, rather than just punishing them for playing mean and calling it a day, or to reevaluate gen perks and items on both sides and tweak gen times, or maybe through adding a side objective. What we absolutely need to do is nerf top tier killers like Nurse, Blight, Ghoul, and Krasus so we can actually make stronger, more creative perks for killers again without living in fear of what they can do with them. And before someone says, we can't nerf Nurse because she's the free-to-play top tier, every meta perk is locked behind a paywall regardless. This excuse doesn't hold up no matter what, because you're gonna have to pay unless you grind for days. And even then, I think I'd rather sacrifice the pay-to-win aspect for the sake of my game's health. Plus, you can just nerf Blight and Ghoul right after and make Hillbilly take their spot after some tweaks. You know, the killer people actually like. We also need to make maps feel better for both sides. We need to find a healthy balance of mean strategies for punishing mistakes, and playing nice in general to make the game feel better while keeping player freedom. Just something, man. I'm just spitballing here. I don't have perfect answers, but this is not the game I fell in love with. I don't want to go back to Warframe as my main game, and Rivals is cooked right now. I just want DBD to feel good again, or at least better than this. Behavior, this is my message to you directly. I understand it's hard, keeping up with this crazy community and what they want, trying to please everyone, keeping track of everything you gotta fix or change with such a tight content schedule, although we told you to slow down several times, but that's not the point. I've been a little mean in this video, and for that, I'm sorry. I'm not making this out of hate. I'm making this video because I genuinely love this game so much, I cannot even put it into words. I've had the time of my life on it, met so many lovely people through it, some I even call my friends today. I'm saying all this because I joined to an era where I got to see firsthand that you guys are fucking talented. Behavior, you have made such works of absolute art. The lore, the killer powers, the visuals, the music, the gameplay when it's at its best. This game was the reason I finally got into content creation. The passion and love I feel for this game and the videos I make of it is unmatched. You need to lock the fuck in, Behavior, or else you're gonna lose more player faith, and eventually even players down the line. You almost did with the past 2 big updates. I don't want that to happen. I believe in you guys. Just please, start listening closer and making better choices. Also, please return Singularity to his former brainy glory. Thank you. As for you, the viewer who is not a Behavior employee, I need you to talk in the comments about your thoughts on the current state of the game. Make it known for Behavior in the community what you feel needs to change. Not just for balance, but for the sake of the fun and the health of the game. But keep it peaceful. I know this seemed like a very killer-sided video, but I promise I'm looking out for you survivors too. I don't want any us versus them crap. I want genuine discussions from both sides, whether you play both roles or not. If I see you being toxic, I will hit an orbital on your fucking comment. With that being said, I can't wait to see and reply to your potential comments. And I hope to see all of you in the next one. This is Star Savior, signing off. Also, go follow Soul Ride and Island Tops for them making this banger thumbnail. Okay, bye.